Okay, so welcome to my session. Thank you for attending. I'm Jess Portnoy. I work for Kultura. And today we'll be talking about JaM. JaM is an acronym for Just Another Monitoring System. And what it does is monitor PHP applications. And it does that in a way that's a bit different than most monitoring solutions out there. And in a way that would allow us to do as little as possible and get as much information as possible, which is always a good cause. So, without further ado, the need. Why do we need something like JaM? So, PHP-based systems have become very complex over the years, just as Facebook. It has become so complex that they had to invent a new interpreter. So, that's one thing that is known to everybody. Now, it's very common that something malfunctions, and this is true not only to PHP, but to a lot of software written in a lot of languages, without anybody noticing why. And the users, in general, are sometimes unaware entirely that it's malfunctioning, but it does affect them, and it affects you and your servers. So that's problem number one. What we do for that is we put monitors in place so that we can check things out. One way we can do that is if the application extends an API, we can probe that API constantly and see what's going on and get stats about how our application behaves. And that's a good thing to do. But it's not the only thing that you can do. And what usually happens is that you have to look at the logs. Now, applications write to usually more than one log file. They can write to Apache's default. That's unless you've changed something in your PHP environment, the default would be to log into Apache's error log. So that's one place where it can go. But you can also set it up so it logs to a different dedicated file. And in some cases, you have few PHP components in your environment. Let's say that you have a PHP model running over Apache and your main web app is there. And you also have a bunch of batch services that are running PHP CLI. And of course, you also have a lot of servers, so it's not just the one. And logging on to NFS is very costly and not very recommended. So you also have an aggregation problem, because usually it wouldn't be just the one machine, you've got a cluster. So these are all problems. Now speaking of problems is stress relieving, but doesn't really help them. So moving on. This is what happens if you don't check and then you deploy. I use this slide every time. It's a killer. I'm not a very visual person, but I'm told that images are good. So there's an image for you. I'm not related to that little girl at all. Okay, so what do we need to monitor in any web app, in any app period, but we're talking about PHP in particular here. So we need to monitor our environment, our CPU, load average, we need to monitor our RAM, we need to monitor the various services that we rely on. So no application stands alone. Usually you rely on some database, be it a SQL one, like MySQL or a NoSQL one, doesn't matter, but usually you'll have somewhere where you store your files. You'll have a web server. Ideally, you'll probably have Memcache or a different caching solution. So you've got a lot of these supporting systems, and if one of them breaks down, then you don't have your service perfectly available. And finally, this is less important, you've got your actual application to monitor. Now, granted, it's not as exciting as other services going down, but the application is important in some way. So you do have to monitor that one. And how can you monitor your application? So, like I said, most mature platforms extend an API that lets you have some insight as to what's going on with the application, what it's doing, what errors it's giving you, and so forth and so on. Some applications don't have them, even though they call themselves enterprise. It usually comes with the title. Whenever something's enterprise, it means that it's very difficult to understand and impossible to read. So some of them don't actually extend a proper API for that at all, but most do. And of course, these platforms would often give you client libraries that you can use to monitor what's going on and do operations against that platform. And that's all good. That's important and good to have. However, there's one thing that you still have to do in most cases, as I said, and that's monitoring the logs. And we talked about why that's difficult, but let's dive in there. So monitoring logs is difficult. as we said, you probably are logging to multiple log files on multiple machines as well. You are sometimes unaware of all the log files that you actually have. I'll give you a for instance, and that's actually what inspired me to start JaM. It all started from an actual need and a real story. When a colleague of mine caught me in the middle of the night, we're on different time zones. It was like I think 1 a.m. at London, and he said, "Listen, I don't know. We have this code, and it runs correctly on my desktop. Doesn't run well on the production environment, and I don't know why." And we checked the log file, the Apache error log, and it's not there. So I said, okay, fine, you probably put in error log directive in your PHP INI. Let me look. They did. It wasn't him, so he didn't know. And it was going to a different log altogether, because many people don't know that, and even experienced PHP developers don't know that there is a directive that you can put in one of your INIs that's called error_log. And that would make PHP log things to a different file altogether. Now that's not bad practice, actually, because oftentimes the Apache error log is so full of garbage that when you actually want to see what's going on with your PHP thing, you can't find it. And that's why this directive is actually a good thing, but you need to be aware of it. And if you're not, then you'd be looking in the wrong place and find bobkas. So that's a real story, and this is what inspired me to look into a solution that would not make us require looking at logs interactively or by parsing them by some algorithm. So, and even if you do parse, let's say that you do have written a parser that goes through the error log in each and every one of your cluster machines and then sends it to some central location. You still have a problem, because parsing is difficult. I'll give you a very simple for instance. Let's say that you've got a database and you've got a table in that database and its name is error. It can happen. Now, your parsing algorithm is looking for the string error. It'll find it anywhere where the query is logged. No good. Lousy, some would say. So that's a problem, and it's a challenge. And you have to continuously tweak the regular expressions that you're using in your parser, because yesterday some developer has introduced a new severity level and you're not catching it. That's bad. And finally, you also have a lot of data. So you have gigs and gigs and gigs of that stuff. So once the algorithm starts parsing, by the time it's done, it's a week later. And you need a dedicated machine crunching the numbers like crazy, which is also no good. So what can we do about that? I was thinking, we can stop parsing logs. How can we do that? I hope they can hear me over there. Oh well. I like walking about, but I can't because the microphone's right there. So how can we not parse logs? PHP is built over C. It's written in C. Has something called the Zend Engine. Okay, Zend Engine. It's called Zend because of Zev Suratsky and Emily Gutman. Those are the founders of the PHP engine, and also the founders of a company called Zend. Coincidentally, I worked there once. That's why I know it. So the Zend Engine is written in C, and every error is being processed by the engine, just like any normal code is processed by the engine. So the Zend Engine knows when something is an error. It doesn't need to parse it. It knows that this is an error. And its default operation when coming across an error is to log it onto a file, be it the Apache error log or any other file. But by overriding its default function, we can make it do other things as well. And this is what JaM does. And that means that you no longer have to parse anything, and once the JaM extension is loaded, it just happens automatically. You don't need to know about it, and you don't need to care, and you don't need to change your application one bit to make it work. We'll see how, and we'll see a demo of it. And that's basically what the JaM extension is. Now, I love talking about how amazing open source is. And JaM has given me a wonderful opportunity to do just that. So, as I was thinking about this idea, I was familiar with a similar idea that does very much the same thing, and that thing is called Zend Monitor. Once again, I'm familiar with it because I worked at Zend, but that solution is proprietary, and it also relies on many other components of a product called Zend Server. And I didn't want that. I wanted something that's entirely false. And I wanted something that can be installed independently and require as little setup as possible, because that's a key advantage when doing things like that. Now, if you're DevOps people, you know that whenever you go to your boss and you tell him or her, listen, mate, we need to invest some time in writing monitors for the environment, you'd be like, monitors for the environment? Why? Like, well, because it can crash. Well, has it? Well, not yet. Like, okay then, carry on. Now, and this is quite common. Good bosses ask, okay, how long will it take? And then you go, well, you see, it'll be a collaborative effort between us and the various development teams, and we don't really know much about the applications, so we need to ask them how to monitor them, and then we have to write a bunch of scripts, and then we have to have some sort of a monitoring system to aggregate all this, and somewhere in between your boss would be like, gee mate, that sounds like a lot of work, so let's see how often it crashes, and if it doesn't, let's leave it at that, okay? And with JaM, you actually go to your boss and you're like, well, it's installing one extension, it's got like decent packages, RPM packages and deb packages. It should take about 15 minutes. I've seen it at LinuxFest. They'd be like, well, you know what, give it a go. 15 minutes is good. Or else you don't even have to tell your boss, because really it's just 15 minutes. You could have been doing Facebook at that time. So this is what JaM tries to do. And the reason why I say this is proof as to why FOSS is so amazing is that, like any entrepreneur would tell you, when you get an idea, you should do some research and see whether or not something like that already exists. So I did. And after doing a bunch of checks and tests and Googling stuff, the magic word was Zend error CB, which is the callback function that the Zend Engine uses to log errors. And after looking for that specific string for a while, I came across something called PHP aware. And it had a README, and it was a decent README too, and it was open source, and it was doing pretty much the same thing I had in mind to do, only it did not log to Elasticsearch, and I wanted Elasticsearch. Elasticsearch has a lot of advantages, and it also has a lot of executive advantages, because executives love graphs. They love them. They all do. They're nuts for them. And using Kibana, you can visualize your data without writing a single line of code. So I really wanted that. So I figured, okay, good, it's open source. I'll extend it, and I'll make a pull request. It had a project on GitHub. And, you'll merge it, and everything will be nice. Okay, so I tried to build it, and it didn't compile. But that's not because of the author. The author did a good job, but he abandoned the project in 2009. And PHP has advanced some since then. And when PHP advances, PHP breaks compatibility. That's like a known rule, and if any of you work with PHP, you know that. For them, progress, and I love PHP, it's a good language, but for them, progress is breakage. It's pretty much the same thing. It's a yin-yang sort of thing that's going on. So that's why it didn't compile. And I've made some changes to it, and then it compiled. But when I started it and tried to use it, it crashed. Once again, because of these changes, not due to anything that the original author has done. So I fixed that one too. And after a few more fixes, the basics were working well with the latest versions of PHP, and I was happy. And then it was time to implement my backend for Elasticsearch. And the author, his name is Miko. I don't know how to pronounce his last name, but there it is. Has done it well, and it was very extendable. So it was very easy for me to introduce a new backend. So PHP Aware could store events in multiple backends. It could send you an email. It could do SNMP trapping and a few others, but not Elasticsearch. So I implemented the Elasticsearch, and then I said, okay, we're ready for a pull request. I made one to Miko, and he said, look, mate, I'm rather happy that somebody has taken interest in that project, but I've stopped maintaining it. You may have noticed that nobody committed to it since 2009, and I'm not really working with PHP anymore. But if you're interested, you can take it and run with it, and I'm happy to let you continue developing it. So awesome! Thank you so much. And I did, and I renamed it JaM, and this is how JaM was born. So that's the story. As far as implementation goes, like I said, it basically overrides some Zend Engine functions. Now, it's a PHP extension, so it's written in C, as most PHP extensions. By the way, you can implement PHP extensions in C++ as well, just a side note. But this one is in C, as is the Zend Engine. And it basically overrides these few handlers so that it first checks what backends you've configured, logs the event, and I call it an event because it's not always an error. That's a bit of a confusing term, but there are different levels of severity as far as PHP events go. And they're not all errors. They can be warnings, they can be notices. So for the duration of this session, we'll say PHP events. And what we'll mean is errors of various severity, basically. So, and then it logs that. It can log it to multiple backends or just one. So you could say, I want to work with Elasticsearch exclusively. You could say, I want to log it to Elastic. I want to have it email me only severity level 1, for example, because you don't want to be swamped with notices that you're not going to handle ever. And we know that we're not going to handle it ever. So you don't want to get that. And it can also do SNMP trapping, and because it's entirely open sourced, you can also implement your own backends and make a pull request. And I'll tell you that I'm no longer interested in this project. No, I wouldn't. But I'll say thank you, and we can talk about it, and I'll be very happy, because I love open source stuff. Okay, so that's the basics of how it works. You're more than welcome to look at the code. We wouldn't be doing that today, but we will see a complete demo of configuration and trials. So to recap the advantages, it's faster than parsing log files, and it's way more reliable. You can't miss, because if the Zend Engine doesn't know it's an error, then we're in dip S, and nothing will help you. So essentially, you can't miss with this. It can be enabled really easily just by installing these packages and editing 2 INI files. We'll see that. It can monitor any PHP application for errors, and you don't need to change anything in the code for that application. So consider it's not only your application, but if you also have a blog for your company or your personal use, and that blog happens to be WordPress, can monitor that too. You've got a Drupal, can do that as well. And you don't need to change anything in any of these applications to have it running. So that's a big advantage. It can look for errors without having to change the code, as we said. It supports a variety of storing solutions. So we'll see and talk about that a bit more. So Elasticsearch, emails, SNMP, and a few others. And as we said, you can make it support additional backends quite easily. And there is a README that explains exactly how. You need a bit of knowledge into C coding, not much, and a little bit of knowledge as to how to write PHP extensions, but I've tried to make it as easy as possible and have given you a template to generate your source code for a different backend, and we'll see and talk about that a bit more. Target audience. Basically, anybody that uses or writes PHP code in any way. So an IT manager with a blog, a person who develops on PHP, any DevOps person that has PHP code somewhere at all in his big production backend. Good for everyone. Put your system here as well. So if your system is PHP, JaM can do good things for you. Okay, so wait. We've said that it monitors PHP events. What if I want my PHP application to use the same infrastructure to log things that are not PHP events, but things that from a business perspective are important to me? You can do that. The JaM extension has a method, and that's called JaM event trigger. and you can, and you can put that in your code anywhere you want, and it'll log these additional messages in the same way that it does all the others. So you just put in an error level and a message, and there you have it. And that is nice. By the way, if anyone has questions while I'm talking, that's fine. You can ask them. I don't mind, and I have very good tracing ability, so I'll never forget what I'm talking about. Go ahead and give it a go. As far as the future roadmap, porting to PHP 7 is in progress. PHP 7 is quite important because the performance advantage is amazing. It's about twice as fast, and usually when people say twice as fast, I mean it's like mostly, in most cases, 2% faster, but for PHP 7 it actually is almost twice as fast. So it's rather important, and I'm in progress on that front. It does support all other PHP versions from 5.2 up to 5.6, which is probably what most of you are using. I do want to get more contributors onto the project, so if you're interested or know anyone who is, do let me know or let them know that I exist and am short. And of course, if you want to create additional backends, that would be lovely as well. They say that it's very important to put images in your presentation. So here's a cute picture of my cat November, who has stayed home in London while I'm talking to you people. So that's a cute image. And it's mine too. I have the copy left for it. Okay, now demo time. So during this demo, we will generate errors. We'll see them by mail and in Kibana. We'll visualize them for your executives, and we'll see how the configuration looks like. Let's go. So first, let's see an existing instance with all these errors that I've accumulated with love and care over the last 2 hours, so I can show you what it looks like when it's really heavy with S. So we've got all these errors, and we can look at what triggered them, and we can look at the actual error. For instance, here, this file could not be found, and this include once directive or function, PHP function has failed, and the error type for this is 2. We'll see a mapping, because these are obviously, they're integers, but they map to constant of PHP events, and we'll see that in a moment. And we can see the source for that application. For instance, in this particular case, it's Kaltura. JaM lets you, by using iniset, set a source for each of your applications, because one server may run your blog, some Drupal instance, and your proprietary application, and a lot of other things as well. So in order to let you know where that event came from, you can set the source for your application. What else do we see here? We see the timestamp, of course, and we can do some cool visualizations with it. So, for instance, if we do this, and this is, I didn't have to write any code literally to get that. So we can see that we had 21 events where trying to open this file has failed. 21 for that one, 20 for this one. I've basically ruined my environment just for you people. I did. This is my personal laptop. I didn't want to rely on VMs or the internet, so I took my environment and I broke it down entirely just for you. Now remember that when you give feedback. All right, so all these errors. It can also tell you and graph which file happened in and what line. So you can see that we have quite a bit of those. And now what I want to do is kill that index. Now, I don't know how familiar you are with, by the way, can you see that all right?
Yeah.
Okay, lovely. Let's close Skype because sometimes embarrassing things happen. Okay. Can you see it okay? Mm-hmm. All right. So Elasticsearch, the way to store events into it is by making JSON requests. this is very good and very convenient, and it also means that the Elasticsearch backend for JaM can basically be used for anything that can accept JSON events and do something with them. So even if you don't want to utilize Elasticsearch, you can use any monitoring application that knows how to get events over JSON and do whatever you want with these events. So I call it the Elasticsearch because this is what I wanted it for, but it can be used for anything else, and we'll see how to do that as well. Seeing how everything is over HTTP, I just do a simple CRL delete here, and that'll delete the index called JaM, so that we can start anew and see errors coming about. So done. Next up, we need to remap. So this is going to be a crash course on Elasticsearch as well. I hope you don't mind. Elasticsearch by default auto-detects the fields in a JSON request, which is nice, but it also sets them to something called analyzed mode. I don't know why that's the default, because it's a rather annoying default, because what that does is if your string has, your field has any spaces in it, it'll split them to different events, and that's rather stupid, because if you've got an error, say require once long path cannot be open, this is one event, but now it's analyzed and it's 5 or 6 or 10, so rather stupid. The way to get around that is to create a mapping file. I really hope you can see it, because I can't. I see it over here, but if you say yes, I'll believe you. So this is a mapping file. It's basically a JSON itself. Just says, listen, here are my fields. Please do not analyze the file. Do not analyze the host name. Don't bloody analyze the error. And that's pretty much it. And then the way to deploy that, thank you so much. I wanted to do that, but I didn't have the courage. So, and then the way to deploy that is making a put request and just passing along this JSON. So I'm going to do that. And then, now it's done. Let's, you know what, let's be even safer and delete what kibana has cached. And then delete our index again and remap it. And go over here and say JaM, create it. And there's nothing. This is happy. This is empty. It has no events. That's nice. Now, to make it happen real fast, I'm going to stop my MySQL. Now, Kaltura relies on MySQL. It has a rather important job. It stores our data. And there we go. Stopping it should trigger quite a bit of action in a moment. So we already have one event that happened, and you can see that I didn't have to do anything about it. I just stopped it, and immediately I got an event. And we can see what happened, and we can see the full stack trace. So that was our message, and here is our stack trace, and here is the file where this shit happened. I'm just tired of saying S. I hope they'll forgive me. And see, we waited just a few more seconds. Here are 7 hits. And it's going to keep on growing until I restart MySQL. Now, that's nice. And you can see that the source for it all says Kaltura. The reason why that is because in the INI, I put in app name Kaltura. This is not mandatory. If you don't, the default's going to be JaM. Now, this is global because it's in an INI, so it's going to affect every one of your applications. So, if you want to override that, you need to use initset in your bootstrapping for that particular application, and I'm going to show that next. I have created this script here. It's called girlfriend PHP, where I try to tell my girlfriend I love her, and it's going to fail miserably, as it usually does. So let's run that one, and this one I'm running from CLI context. So as we said, once the extension is loaded, because PHP can support multiple SAPIs, that's a Zend term, it means server APIs. So it can be over an Apache model, it can be FastCGI, it can be CLI. And if you load JaM onto that, whichever it may be, whichever SAPI, it'll work. So here's CLI. And if we look here for girlfriend, we'll see our little event. And the reason it failed is that there's no such function as ech. It should be echo. And, well, it happens to me often. So that's another one. And we can see, if we visualize here, there it is. And since we want some more data now, here you can search for particular things, and then you can go and visualize them. So now that I've removed girlfriend, it's going to show all of them. And we can see the girlfriend one, and a bunch of others stemming from the fact MySQL is down. The same thing can be done. Let's bring back MySQL. And stop Apache. Now, as I said, I do have a PHP CLI process here. Okay, that's our batch, and Kaltura is an open source video platform, so basically gives you the ability to manage your videos and assets, be it VOD or live streaming and so forth. And the batch daemon is responsible for doing the backend operations, such as converting your uploaded videos. So it's always running in the background, and it uses our REST API to communicate with the Apache. So now that the Apache is down, go ahead.
I think it's still on.
What's that? The Apache?
Yeah.
Let's see.
Start instead of stop.
Good call. Let me also stop or mon it, because there's a watchdog responsible for bringing it back up. Okay, let's see. Totally down. I'll prove it. Hold on. I'll prove it. I know how. More down than this it can't be. Okay, now let's see what happened in Kibana. Plenty of things. Let's see timestamps. Alright, so yeah, this is probably one of those. Let's see the latest here. There we go. Bad things happened all the time. Okay, good. I'll bring it back up. And let's look at the configuration a bit further. So in order to install these are this is a Debian machine, and I'm releasing packages for both Debian and RHEL and friends. So if you're working with any of these distros, you can just do either aptitude or YAM, and just do PHP 5 JaM. It's installed on my machine, but that's really all you need to do. And then the way it's implemented is that every backend is a separate PHP extension. So if you decide you just need Elastic, you don't need to load the others at all. So there's a main core extension called PHP 5 JaM, and then there are others for each backend. If we do aptitude show, there we go, backend implementation for the Elasticsearch server. If you don't work with any of these distributions, you can still run it. You just need to compile it, and there are instructions in the README. So it should be able to work on whatever distribution you have, and other Unisys as well. And it might work on that peculiar Windows thingy, but I can't promise that, seeing how I don't work with the peculiar Windows thingy. But it might work out. Can't promise. So let's look at the INI. There are several of them because, as we said, there are several extensions. So let's look at the main one. This is JaM INI. So what it says is load the core extension, then load Elastic as well, load email, but it only uses Elasticsearch at the moment. Now I want to show emails as well, and what I'm going to do is edit this one and say email. Now, it's all fairly well documented, even though if you find a bug or something that's missing, I'll be happy to get a report on that. But as a general rule, all the directives are here, and you can look them through, because there are a lot of options and a lot of things that you may want to change. The reason why I kept it very simple is because, again, I want you to see that you don't really need to do much to get it working. Okay, so I'm adding this. As we said, this is our default app name is Kultura, because this server mainly runs Kultura. By the way, you could see here, hold on, kibana. If we go to the source, we can see that there is a girlfriend there, and that's from my CLI script as well. And the reason for that is because I've used iniset in this particular script to tell it to use this as an application name. Okay, so that's what we have in this INI. You can see that you can enable JaM SNMP as well and JaM files. The files one is very simple. It'll just serialize the event and put it in a file wherever you tell it. So not that useful, but sometimes good. And next we go on to Elasticsearch. Very simple, just one directive. Says where is your Elasticsearch server, and that's it. In my particular case, everything is on localhost, but it can be changed, of course, to have a central server log in everything. So if you've got a cluster, you install JaM on each of these machines, you provide one endpoint for your Elasticsearch, and you're done. Very simple. And for email, also quite simple. I'm going to use Mailinator because I don't want it to spam my box. Mailinator is a lovely service meant for people who fill in a lot of forms in a lot of places they don't trust. You just go on the web, type in Mailinator, and you get this lovely box here all to yourself and to anyone else who has used JaM LinuxFest. And emails will just arrive here. Now, let's trigger an event. We need to reload Apache, of course, if we want to use it for Apache things. But let's start with girlfriend. Okay, crashed. There we go. So we can see the actual error, which is call to undefined function. And we can see a very uninteresting stacked trace, seeing how it's just one line in one script, but when it's more interesting, you'll see more, and we'll do that MySQL exercise in a moment again, and we'll see all these emails coming through. Okay, and that's pretty much it. This is the script. It happened on line 3. Let me remind you of the lovely script here. Okay, so the event in question was here. And that's pretty much it. Now, what I wanted to talk about a bit, and I've touched that briefly on my first slide. How much time do I have?
15 minutes.
Oh, 15 is all right. Users often don't know that the application is misbehaving, but it is. And if you don't know about it, eventually they will too.
Yeah.
And that's a problem, and I want to demonstrate that real quick. So what I'm going to do is use this form that I've prepared, and I'm going to submit it, and it's going to look all right. Nobody ever leaves phone numbers, do they? Okay. Oh, but look, it's not. Now, I've made JaM output it to the screen as well, so that we can see it immediately. But essentially, the output that a person would get if I hadn't done this would be this. So, thank you for submitting, we got this, everything's all right, it's all good, smiley. But it's not. It's not at all. Let's look at it, at the email that we should be receiving. Yeah. So, it's pretty bad, actually. See, it's trying to include this file, and it's not there. Interesting. Let's look at the code. wonder why. And also, there's this little thing. Now, my PHP claims that there is no such function as no existing function. Now, I must say, this is horrid. What language doesn't have that? Well, PHP doesn't. But you wouldn't be able to tell that. And to the end user, it'll look fine. It'll say thank you, and, you know, we've got your details, and your name is Jess, and we've got your email, and, you know, it's all good, with a smiley. So this is why it's important to monitor things, because even though they look functional, in actuality, they're not. And I'll show you a more vivid example of that, and then we'll move on to questions, which hopefully you'll have. Let's delete our indexes as well, again, just to be clearer. Okay, good. Delete this thingy. Good. Mappings. Good. And I do want Apache to be running. Good. And let's stop MySQL again. No, hold on. Let's do something else. Let's do something fun. Okay. I am going to relog into this one. Oh, nice. I don't want emails anymore. So let's disable the email. Like I said, you could do it quite easily. Just remove this, reload your Apache, and you're done. Okay, good. Trying to log into my system. It seems alright. Let's go see some videos, maybe. Yeah. Maybe the big buck bunny thing I have here. Yeah. Alright. So open it up. My system's a bit slow at the moment, it's doing a lot. Let's try this player, which is nicer. Alright, hold on. Alright, other than the fact that this laptop is a bit crowded and loaded, it seems alright, seems functioning enough. We can even play it. Yeah, good, very nice. Now, you would think that nothing would happen here. Because, well, basically everything seems to work okay. Let's see. Whoa. So, yeah, it seemed to work fine. The user was able to log in, play some videos, you know, do things. But look how much is going on in the background that you don't know about. So this directory doesn't exist because I've deleted it before as part of the trash in my environment. Let's look at some graphs that managers love so much. So yeah, I mean, a lot's going on here, and it seems functional. Yeah.
Is there like a parameter in a configuration file to just mark maybe something arbitrary, like an arbitrary string, like a machine name or something like that, so we could see maybe if there's a particular node in our environment?
Yes, I'm sorry, I must have skipped that because you have the host name over here.
Oh.
So in this particular case, it's a localhost, and it's JessX, which is my host name.
Yeah.
But every event includes a host name field. So yes, you can graph that too, and you can see particular nodes that are misbehaving. Yes, of course. Good question, and thank you for reminding me about that. These are basically all the fields. So this is an Elasticsearch automatic ID, means nothing to us, just saying. Index, the name is JaM. This can also be changed. The reason why it's JaM is because this is what I put here. See, /JaM. but it could have been /Jas or Alex if my name was Alex, and anyone else. His name is Alex. Okay, good. So we've got that, and we have a type, which is log, again because of this /log thing. And we have the errors, as we said, the error type, which currently has 2 and 1, the file in which it happened, which also includes the exact error line as well, and the host name, and our source. So there's Kultura and there's girlfriend, but it's so unsubstantial in relation to Kultura right now, and plus we've purged the index. But if I run girlfriend again, then it'll show girlfriend as well. There we go. And we've got the time the event has happened. Now this is logged as epoch. Everyone knows what epoch is, right? Okay, but you can change the formatting to anything you'd like in the mappings file. I'll show you. Okay, so this timestamp field, I say it's a date, and I say that I want to see it like that, but it can be changed to anything else you'd like. Okay, and with that, I think it's time for questions if you have them. Yes?
About how long has this been in, on production systems?
Well, I started the project for a hackathon that we had in the company, an internal one, and that was about February, I think. At the moment, we use it on a lot of testing environments and some production as well. I'm not sure who else uses it because it's an open source project.
Right.
But about 2 months or so.
So then it's pretty safe and lightweight to run in a production environment, or should we mostly focus it on development and staging environments?
Well, I recommend starting from staging for sure, just to see the amount of events you're getting and how it's behaving.
Yeah.
It does degrade a bit because it has to, because there's another action that's going on here.
Yeah.
But not by much, because these are very easy to do requests, you know. They're just JSONs being passed along, and assuming your Elasticsearch is right next to your nodes, as it should be. I mean, it's on the same network and the same sub-network. It should be rather fast to do. I'd also recommend starting by logging only fatal errors or very big errors, and I'll show you what I mean by that. I think I have a link to that in my README. This is the project home, by the way. It does exist in the resources as well. And let's see if I have a link to PHP.net where, yes, I do. Good for me. And granted, it's not parsed as an href, but all right. Okay, so as we've seen before, we got 2 error types, 1 and 2. So that was error and warning. There are multiple events in PHP, and JaM captures all of them, including parse error. So even if your script is dead on arrival, i.e. it wouldn't run at all because it's not parsable, you'll get an event from JaM. And what I recommend doing is selecting for production only the very serious events, so that there'll be a few less of them, hopefully a lot less of them. And when you use email as backend as well, only use the most severe ones that you'd actually, I mean, considering, let's say that you're in the supermarket and you get one of those, you run home. These are the ones that should be logged to the email, and all the rest can go onto Elasticsearch and you can view them at your own free time, because you don't want to get blasted, and you'll be surprised how many events you have that you don't bloody know about. You think everything's perfect. You will, I promise. Ping me if you don't. Does that answer the question? Okay, awesome. Anyone else?
Well, so the elk stack then for your PHP side just becomes like EK because you don't need Logstash because it's
Yes,
going
exactly
directly
right.
to Kibana now.
Yes.
And that's kind of cool.
Yeah, I thought so too. And like I said, it gives you an added value of being able to use that same front or,
Yeah.
or backend actually, to log other things and in other ways as well. Because basically, in the background, what my extension does, the implementation is just using a library called JSON-C and sending JSONs. So if we can do that live as I talk even. Well, usually can't do two things at once, but let's try it. If I instead say that my Elastic endpoint is Go PHP, and now I will create a Go PHP here, live with you fine people, and I'll var dump what I'm getting. You know what, let's var dump server, just in case. And reload, and let's see. How will we do this? Yeah, well, var dump wouldn't do it. Let's log it to some file because we wouldn't see it that way. Because print r true temp log meaningful name under temp. All good. Okay, and now let's give our script here another go. See what happened? Just posted it onto my script and then it got into the log. So you can do that. So essentially it's called Elasticsearch, but because I don't use anything but just simple JSONs, you don't need Logstash and you can use it for something else as well.
Yeah. Cool.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Appreciate that. Yeah.
Do you have a sense of how close it is to being usable in PHP 7?
I am almost done. I actually, I went through it, and in like a few hours I was so close. And then it segfaulted, and I had something else to do. But I do hope to get back to it soon. And yeah, I think, with a couple hours more of work, it'll be ready. Yeah. Oh, hold on. I love you. You ask a lot of good questions.
Sorry.
But he hasn't asked a question yet.
Yes,
So.
get there first.
Sorry. Are the errors still transmitted to the error log?
Yes,
Okay.
yes, they are. Yes, they are.
That's all I have. Wasn't very
Once
necessary.
the method that I'm using, the one that overrides the default, is done with, returns control, goes into the error log. Good question. Yeah.
So are when it's writing to Elasticsearch or sending the email, are those actions synchronous?
It happens as like this. So the function processes the event, does the CRL request with a very close by timeout, so that doesn't hang for too long, and also does email. The way it does email is the way PHP does email in general. It uses an MTA, so
Right.
it just puts it in the queue. It doesn't actually have to wait for the email to be sent. So it's rather quick, and life goes on whilst the postfix or whatever MTA is doing the processing. So yeah. Anybody else? You haven't asked a thing. I'm offended.
No, I'm in awe. This is awesome.
Oh, thank you. Now I forgive you.
I'm secretly plotting about how I'm going to use it. That's why I'm so quiet. I'm plotting.
Oh wow. Dude, red's not my color. I'm gonna blush. All right. Well, anyone else? Okay. So thank you so much for attending. I hope it was fun for you. It was fun for me. And have a great Linux Fest and a good journey home. For me, it's 24 hours. I hope for you it's less.
Thank you.